back in the early 20th century, if you wanted to find anything out, you'd invariably have to go to a library, consult an encyclopedia, or you could consult Datas, the memory man. This little special Cemetery Club video is all about one of the great performers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries who used nothing but the power of his mind.
Datas can quote instantaneously and accurately thousands of dates when questioned, such as the death of all British sovereigns since William the Conqueror, politicians, statesmen and eminent men.
Now, Datas was born William John Maurice Bottle in 1875, and 2 years later, his father moved the family from Kent to Penge to work in the Sydenham gasworks. Now, this is a place where William himself would end up working when he was 16 years old, after a brief tenure working as a delivery boy. Now, he would work there for 10 years, and he was doing some serious heavy graft, but that was all to change in 1891 after he finished a night shift. He had a quick kip, and then he took a stroll amongst the Crystal Palace, where he happened across a discussion where two gentlemen were arguing about the date of the Tichborne case. Now, the Tichborne case was a very well-known Victorian scandal, really, and the two guys could not kind of agree as to when it happened. And so William came up and said, I've got a fat mind for facts and figures. In fact, my colleagues test me on it, and I can tell you that it happened here and now and on this particular date. Now, this conversation was being overheard by a gentleman who was astounded by William's knowledge and said, "You, sir, do you fancy a change?" Now, of course, young William, who was working his arse off in a gasworks, said, "Of course I do." That very evening, he was taken to the Royal Standard Music Hall in Victoria, and he was invited for a 3-week stint where he would basically perform on stage and answer questions from the audience on any kind of fact and figure that he could remember. How did the marvellous Datas commit facts to memory? Well, he's very coy about it in the book that he published in the early 1900s. He just simply said, "I remember things," and that was it. But he had a visual memory, so let's say he was trying to remember the Great Fire of London. He'd remember 1666. He'd remember fire, flames, buildings falling down, and then he'd also associate it with other things like 1066, the Battle of Hastings, and 1766, where apparently a very great number of notable men were born. When William was younger, he was actually very ill. He wasn't actually expected that he'd probably survive past the age of 6. So he committed himself, with his little education, to commit facts and figures to his memory, and he would spend hours upon hours sitting by a chimney, memorising all that knowledge. Datas is remarkable also for the fact he sold his head not once, but twice. First in the early 1900s to a group of American doctors who wanted to study the remarkable processing power of his mind. The joke, however, was with Datas because he actually outlived all the doctors concerned. So he sold his head again, this time in the early 1930s, to a group of anonymous doctors from St Thomas's Hospital in London. They paid him £1,000 and bought him a plot here in Bandon Hill Cemetery for the trouble. Now, the remarkable thing regarding Datas' performance was that he always gave preference to women who asked him questions from the audience, and he'd be asked things like, when did Kensal Green Cemetery open? When did this fire happen in Chicago? And he'd always answer, apparently, in the affirmative. And he was also known for his response, where he would say the fact and then go, "Am I right, sir?" Even though Datas himself is long gone, he is forever immortalised in the Alfred Hitchcock film, The 39 Steps, where he was the direct inspiration for one of the most important characters in the entire film, Mr. Memory.
A serious question, please. What won the Derby in 1921? Mr. Jack Jones, humorist, with Steve Donegal, won a length at the odds of 6-1. Second and third, Craig and Aaron and Lemonora. Am I right, sir? Right.
You'd have no idea that this man was essentially the human Wikipedia.